Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky. I got two words for you, Andy. Skinny Luka? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcast, this one's always free, never behind paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where 35,000 plus subscribers are all dissecting every image that they have been able to ingest over the course of a holiday weekend of Luka Dončić. Andy, we talked going into the weekend about how Luka's fitness level will be scrutinized. Like very few athletes on the planet as the Lakers head into next season. And it's as if Luka heard the show, because this weekend has been filled with photography of Luka Dončić. He's posting stuff on his Instagram. He's out at the Real Madrid, I believe it is, basketball contest. Wearing fitted T-shirts and looking skinny. And Andy Kamenetzky, I cannot believe for a second that this isn't at least somewhat intentional.
No, absolutely. I mean, you combine that with Luka's wife posting a picture of something that she was cooking, presumably both for herself and for Luka, that if we are all being honest, none of us know exactly what she was making, much less was that the final step, right? The first step, the final step could be then add lard or whatever. But for the time being, she posted a pan full of what appeared to be vegetables, rice, maybe some limas, all sorts of stuff that looked really healthy. It appeared to be in some type of clear broth. It
looked
very
delicious, and it wasn't, at the very least at this point, wasn't deep fried. But we have reached, Andy, the stage of the summer. I mean, mark the time, it's May 26th as we record. We've reached the scoping Luka's wife's Instagram feed for clues as to what Luka's eating.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. You can only scope Luka's wife's Instagram if she's posting photos. That's true. If she's posting photos, one has to assume that unless this is the most offline, or I guess sort of not paying attention to anything online in the NBA Twitter or Instagram discourse, one has to assume that they are very aware not just of what they are posting, but the reactions to the things that they are posting. Everybody seems to be leaning into, right on the heels of Jason Gallagher, the producer of Mind the Game, and also before.
Yeah, this is what prompted our conversation on Friday, right?
Somebody that is very presumably quite connected. He's also a big-time Dallas Mavericks fan. So between those connections and the ability to speak directly with JJ Redick, with Luka Dončić, with LeBron, not saying those are his sources, just saying there's a lot of different avenues Jason has for hearing, hey, Luka's taking this whole fitness thing really seriously. These photos on the heels of that chatter, and for what it's worth, obviously different pictures from different angles, skinny Luka, depending in a different photo, I guess could look like, not quite as skinny, or medium-sized Luka or whatever. But that being said, if this is the after photo, you want to compare it to this picture of Luka just with the Lakers before, there's no question Luka looks thinner in the after. That is true in these photos, at least.
There is also a report, I guess, in Slovenia, and this is where we're going to start leading on our new Slovenian listeners, that can kind of guide us, that what Luka has been up to. I'll read here from the translation. The story was all over Twitter over the course of the weekend, so I cannot totally vouch for the for the translation into English. But
Do you need my help, Brian? I've been brushing up on.
I know you've been working hard, but I will go ahead and read what's on the page in front of me. But
we know I'm the go-to for the Locked On Lakers podcast when it comes to translating Slovenian.
Please feel free to correct me if you catch a mistake. Away from the cameras and attention, he is preparing, he being Luka, a sharp response, both to the unfortunate past season, which was marked by a wide range of health problems, an unplanned move from Dallas, and all the criticism. There were a lot of criticism due to his faltering fitness and allegedly unsportsmanlike life. Again, I'm not totally, the translation might not be perfect. In the first phase of the long period between the seasons, Dončić, now without basketball, dedicated himself to transforming his body in Ljubljana, I believe is how you pronounce the name of the city, which indicates both guided indoor conditioning and a modified diet. First physical results are already clearly visible, and the measurement results are also encouraging. And then we'll see at Eurobasket what comes next. But so you get that report out of Slovenia, and then you get the photos of a guy looking skinnier. And, look, you want to talk about forget what Luka's wife is doing. Luka certainly knows the meaning of putting stuff on his own Instagram. And if he had, say, put on 15 pounds since the Lakers were bounced by Minnesota, I don't think he'd post that.
No. And first of all, it's worth noting that one of the photos, the photo from Real Madrid that's gotten a lot of attention, Luka's actually wearing white, which often makes you look frankly fatter. Like if Luka was trying to hide pounds, he would be wearing, if not a black t-shirt, navy, brown, something darker. So the fact that Luka's out there, out in public in a white t-shirt lets you know that he's feeling good about the
flip
revenge.
Side, though, to play devil's advocate, he's rich enough to afford the kind of t-shirts that would be very slimming. So who's to say? I think look, the point of all this,
unless I'm just going to say this, I feel like unless you've got the foundation to work with, slimming stuff tends to make you just look bigger.
Well, I think it's a matter of he was already in shape compared to normal people. He needs to be in elite NBA basketball shape. And so I think what the point of all this is, again, the season has been off. They've been done for a month. And it looks as if Luka is taking the offseason conditioning seriously. He, I'm sure, gave himself a little bit of time to heal to make sure he wasn't hurting himself. But at the very least, whether he's been exercising a ton or what the workouts have looked like or whatever it might be, he's clearly looks like he's in pretty good shape. And then we will see in Eurobasket what that translates into. And, we joke about these sorts of things, but it is enormously important that Luka come into training camp this year healthy and ready to take on the kind of load that he has in years past. I mean, for all the can Luka do this? Can he make it through a season like ever? You go back 2 seasons, he led the playoffs in everything.
Yeah.
Everything, every statistical category that you can come up with. Luka, when the Mavs made that run to the finals, led the NBA in it. Points, rebounds, minutes, all the 3-pointers attempted, 3-pointers made, all of this stuff. He was at the top of all of it. And the Mavericks made it to the finals on the strength of defense. So we have very recent proof that Luka can play on a team that plays good defense, because that's how they got to the finals. And Luka can carry a team, statistically and make it all the way through because he led the NBA in everything in those playoffs. But that said, it is critically important that he show up in shape, feeling good, and ready to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, both for the Lakers, but I also think for himself as well.
Absolutely.
We saw a lot of comments in reaction to Friday's show, which was at least led with the report from Jason Gallagher, and a lot of people pointing out, all this talk about Luka's conditioning, or he's perennially one of the league leaders in minutes, average per game, total minutes. Yes, nobody's denying that Luka can play a lot of minutes. The problem is there is legitimate reason to believe that the heavy minutes that he plays, that his body may not necessarily be able to handle it over the course of an entire season, or that there are injuries connected to those heavy minutes. Like Luka is
more than, but there's one other thing to that I want to get to next, because it's not just what you're talking about for this season. There's more to it, and we'll get to it next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Wayfair. The days are getting longer. The weather's heating up. Everybody's eating healthy, just like Luka. People are spending way more time outside, which means perfect time to refresh your outdoor space, whether you're working with a big backyard or small balcony. Wayfair has everything that you need to make it feel more like you. Wayfair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup, from comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor. They've got it all, and at great prices that really fit your budget. And I love that they mix different styles that they offer you, the different choices. Wayfair makes it really easy to find the pieces that match your vibe, even if it's kind of eclectic, without spending a fortune, especially since the delivery is both free, like as in monetary, but also hassle-free, especially for the big stuff. Shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online this summer. Get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home.
So all of what you're saying, Andy, is 100% true. Like, it matters, for his ability to get through this season and all of that stuff. And like, can you be what they need him to be in the fourth quarters of games, which, he seemed to run out of steam in the first round this year. Now look, it's sort of a season that never really got going because he had an incredibly long off season. But in terms of like playing, he played deep into they made the finals. Then there was international play, and then he comes in. He kind of he's never really healed. He gets hurt. He comes back. He's traded. There was no rhythm to what they were doing, and he
got sick. He got sick before one game and got hurt during another one.
So there's no opportunity really to gain a rhythm throughout. But that said, it's not just this season and his ability to carry the team and all that kind of stuff, and play big minutes and do all the stuff the Lakers are going to want him to do. The bet that Nico Harrison made was not this year Luka's not going to be worth it, or even really next year that Luka's not going to be worth it. It's that over time, in the long term, he is a bad bet. And why is he a bad bet? Because he doesn't take care of himself, because he's been playing professional basketball since he was 16 or something like that.
Younger.
That's right. And it's years and years and years and years. And so while he's 26 years old, he's got mileage of a 30-year-old. I'm just making up numbers here. But this is what Nico Harrison is essentially saying. And so where I will agree with him is that, like all athletes, it gets harder as you get older. And so doing the same thing that you could do at 22 is harder when you're 28. Doing what you want to do when you're 28 is harder when you're 33, 34. And these guys, again, age differently athletically because of all the pounding that they take in this game. And so Luka's long-term prognosis really is based on his ability to come into every season having maximized his off seasons, having done all that stuff, and admitting that you can't do the same stuff that you used to do. Kobe used to sit in the locker room and eat McDonald's before games. And I swear to God, it is still the most stunning thing to me to remember, just in terms of how different NBA locker rooms and environments and fitness and health is now. They used to deliver McDonald's to players from the McDonald's at Staples Center, and guys would be sitting there eating it pregame.
Mm-hmm.
That is so different than anything that would happen today. Nobody would touch that stuff. Certainly not in front of in before a game, and definitely not in front of media. But like even Kobe reached a point where it's like, I can't.
Yeah,
I can't.
absolutely.
I got to start taking better. Like so, the idea that Luka at 26 be like, all right, it's time to really do this. And then what I thought was interesting was the part of the report. Again, translation notwithstanding, that he's preparing a sharp response. Like it says to me, like you and I talked about this Friday, I think it was, where like there is at least some degree of potential for like Luka to do this out of spite, out of revenge, out of all these kinds of things. People make the jokes all the time about, guy, girl, whatever, your breakup body after your significant other.
I've said many times, I've said many times, I want Luka to come back with his revenge body.
Yeah. I mean, so, over the course of the long term, you want it to be something that Luka does because he understands the merits of it. But in the short term, if he does it to humiliate Nico Harrison, the impact is to be the same for the Lakers. And, that report indicates that he is hyper aware of all of, the bets that Dallas made against him and why, and has every intention of proving them wrong. Doesn't mean he's going to be able to avoid injury entirely. Nobody does that. But if he puts in the work, he's going to be in a lot better place.
Speaking of revenge and humiliation, Austin Reaves' agent went on Twitter and predicted that should Austin get traded, the Lakers will be humiliated in the process and perhaps feeling some revenge from Austin with whatever team he'd be playing for. He tweeted out, quote, "Next year is going to be a show. People have no idea what's to come. Keep putting him in trade rumors for second string centers," which, first of all, in and of itself was kind of aggressive for an agent to put out there. Also a reminder, when athletes say that they're not, they don't pay attention to what's said on social media, they have no idea. They're all lying.
Well, here's the thing.
They're all lying.
Even if they don't follow it themselves, they all have people who do it for them. So I don't want, if Austin doesn't want to be, get himself lost in the comments section, if he doesn't want to do the KD kind of thing where KD seems to fuel himself based on stuff he reads on social media and genuinely just seems to enjoy the interaction. If that's not for AR and he wants to be out, playing 18 holes 3 or 4 days a week, he can do it knowing full well what people are saying because somebody will tell him, because clearly at the very least his agent is paying attention to it.
We have both over the years heard from the people around certain athletes about things that either we had written or said on air or whatever. It's been pretty rare directly from the athlete. There's only been a few times where over the years, like an athlete has asked me to give them a copy of something that I wrote, like a profile or whatever that they knew I was doing. But we've heard from enough people in their orbits to know that these guys are made aware. It's funny when he talks about like the second string centers, like I am assuming that is a reference to Daniel Gafford, because Gafford is I
actually don't know if it's a reference to anyone specifically. I just think it's more of like I read it more as like a broad, you're wildly undervaluing Austin and throwing him in deals with any center you can find.
I guess the only reason
that's how I look at it.
It certainly could be. I just think it's interesting that he said second string centers, because the overwhelming majority of the proposed Austin trades, fake trades, and over the course of this week, we're actually going to go through one that I created, a pretty sweeping trade that involves Austin and frankly involves most of the team.
Yeah.
Just in an effort to try to illustrate, if nothing else, whether you guys like this trade, don't like this trade, whether Brian likes this trade, doesn't like this trade, sort of the options, I think, in front of the Lakers in terms of making big change and the limitations in front of them and how big the change could actually be.
I've seen Gafford linked to the Lakers more than I've seen, because the consensus seems to be, unless, of course, Nico just like feels like they have to exact some sort of tax on the Lakers because of the Luka part.
Right. Yes.
But I have seen much more of like Gafford to the Lakers, not Gafford as part of a Reaves deal. I think the consensus is that Reaves wouldn't go in a deal. Like Gafford's not good enough to trade.
Frankly,
Reaves.
Shouldn't go in
right.
a deal.
And it's the same with Claxton. I mean, he and Claxton are in kind of that group where the consensus seems to be you ought to be able to get that done, or certainly would try to get that done without putting Reaves in. And if you don't, if you can't do it without putting Reaves in, then you probably walk away. Agents in this case are like players where the accuracy of the disrespect doesn't. If he's seen one thing that puts Reaves in a deal for a player that he thinks is backup player, whatever, then it's all Austin's being traded for backups. But there's another part of the Reaves moving to the next contract, whether that's with the Lakers or someone else, or the trade rumors or whatever it might be. Another report from the weekend that I thought actually was pretty good for the Lakers if they keep Austin around. That's next. So, Andy, the general, we all know that if Reaves decides this offseason, if he can sign an extension this offseason, but it's only going to be worth about $19.5 million a year, if he waits, can do much better as a free agent following next season. Eric Pincus at Bleacher Report, in a column about Reaves and what he might do in free agency, indicated that he being Reaves, should he get to free agency after next year, would look for a deal starting around $30 million a year, which would be a significant raise over what he makes now. And it would be a significant raise over what he could make, that $19.5 million. It's 50% more than what he could make if he signs the extension. But it's well short of what a max deal would be. And so if that number is true and somewhere in the ballpark of what Austin Reaves might be looking for, that changes the context, at least for me, a little bit. I mean, because anybody thought you were going to be able to keep Austin or a player of his production for, anywhere less than like 25 to 30 million. With the cap going up, new CBA, all that, you're insane. Like, you're not going to get Austin for $20 million. That's just not going to happen. He is, in this market that we live in, easily a $25 to $35 million player. And so if the number that we're already sort of talking about is that $30 million range, that's a lot different than 42. That's a lot different than Austin is going to be looking for, hunting right away for the max deal or whatever. That is a significant difference, big difference in those numbers. And so I took that actually as a relatively encouraging sign for the Lakers in terms of how you figure all this stuff out and what the right amount to pay him and still be able to pay other people. 30 million is a pretty good number for him.
Well, it depends on how wide of a range we're talking about with 30 million. Like if 30 million starts creeping into 35, 36, like anything still in the 30s range.
Let's say he has an all-star adjacency. Let's say he does what Aaron Riley says, comes back next year and crushes it, averages 23, 7. Like, again, if you look at his numbers this year, he was one of 12 players who put up the numbers that he did. So if he does it again depending on what the market looks like, would I want to give him $42 million a year? No. Would somebody? Possibly.
What makes this tricky with Austin is I can see an argument where Austin could be worth more on a different roster than this particular one, because the most important thing that you have to think about with any roster construction moving forward is what is the best way to supplement Luka. And I think Austin is a very interesting player in that there's some ways where I think he fits beautifully alongside Luka, and other ways where I think he is, if not the exact opposite of what you'd look for to supplement or support Luka, he he's on the border of it. Like, he is on the border of exacerbating a lot of Luka's weaknesses while in some ways strengthening his strengths. And while I want to make it clear, I am not comparing Luka Dončić and D'Angelo Russell as apples to apples players, because clearly Luka Dončić is on a different stratosphere than D'Lo, but
you're comfortable with that?
I am very comfortable with it. It is, though, very similar to the propositions that the Lakers kept dealing with, having Austin and D'Lo teamed up. They complemented each other very well in the ways that worked, but the ways that didn't work became more and more problematic. So this is what I would say, the more that you commit to Luka and Austin together, which, like, you're starting to talk at that point, Luka's extension, like 100, probably somewhere between like $100 to $110 million with both of those guys, you need to be very sure that with what is left, you can not just support Luka, but support the next best player that requires damn near the exact same support as Luka. You know what I mean? Like, it becomes X amount of needs. Can you fill them all with what's available? Austin and Luka, I think, is a foundation. In some ways, it could be really good, but you have to be really confident that you will have enough remaining that you can fill out all of the other stuff that you'd need to fill out anyway with Luka, but in a lot of ways, Austin doesn't help with it all.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some we will get more into this, I think, for tomorrow's show, because it is what you're getting at is fundamentally an extension of the conversation we finished last week, or we started last week, finishing the week, about what the Lakers can learn from teams still in it, what the playoffs have taught teams like the Lakers. And, this is kind of a fundamental question of it, because two things, I think this is a great example of two things can be true at once. There are people who just look at, Reaves, $30 million for Austin Reaves, $35 million. Especially in the new economy of the NBA, where salaries are going, that is going to be the number for a player like Austin, a player in Austin's caliber.
Absolutely.
If you're not going to be paying him $35 million, chances are you're going to be paying somebody else who's got flaws that come out that can be potentially exploited in the playoffs. You're paying that guy $28 to $35 million, and somebody else, Rui in the new economy could be a $25 million guy. Like, if he has a good season next year or something like, so it's all, the numbers are things that we have to, I think, the basketball public's going to have to get used to. But where the Lakers are, and this is, maybe we'll start here tomorrow, where the Lakers are, you have to make sure the pieces fit together really, really well, because you have a very limited number of assets.
I also think too, and this is obviously not Austin's fault in any way, that much of what was liked about Austin, I think both from fans and certainly with inside that building, was that he was arguably the biggest bargain in the NBA. Like, he was on the shortest of lists of best contracts in the league, not counting rookie scale guys. Like, I don't even think that is debatable. You could make a very strong argument that Austin had the best contract in the league. And I've talked about before, I think,
for sure,
I think there have been times where Austin's contract has been too good for the Lakers' own good.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be able to look at Austin in this new economy and, recognize what it means to have him at 30, somewhere between 30 to 40 million, and what could be left over. And can you build around that? Yeah. All those things I mentioned before. But you also, I think, have to do it in ways where you're not holding it against Austin essentially for getting a raise. Therefore, he's not as fun a story for you.
Right. Well, right. That's not. But it is the other thing, and we'll quit here. He's better. than he was when he signed the contract.
Absolutely.
So that makes a difference too.
Yes.
So we'll keep unpacking all this stuff. We'll get into your trade idea, which kind of is an offshoot of the question that we're bringing up here. So plenty to get into this week as the conference finals inch toward the just regular finals. Locked On Lakers on YouTube, as you can go hang out with over 35,000 subscribers of the channel. We'll see everyone tomorrow.